It's good to see all of you sisters and brothers this morning. And I want to thank especially the longtime members of Peace and Freedom Party to whom we owe so much. The PNF veteran comrades for all the hard work over so many years to keep our ballot qualified socialist feminist party on the ballot in the most populous state in the country. It really is an achievement to be saluted. And it's great to see so many young people, many delegates for the first time, who are proving by their activism that the youth are not the future, they're the present. It's the time for us now to work together to build and expand Peace and Freedom Party and to spread the word of the necessity, the urgent necessity of socialism to overcome the multiple crises that we are confronting. I believe that in this time that the voter registration, which has grown in Peace and Freedom in California, shows that there is more interest in our state for socialism, and it's important that we defend our ballot status and our activism and presence. We do have to grow our presence in the coming struggles. This year has been one of unimaginable developments and crisis, in which there is no more important time than now to be a socialist. There is the COVID-19 pandemic and the attendant economic crisis, the struggle against racism and police terror, and the incredible deepening and broadening of the movement against racism, of the Black Lives Matter movement, and a defense against the war on Black America. The war on Black America, I think, is our greatest priority to demand an end to this war. We're all painfully aware of what Trump has done in the last 4 years. Dismantle environmental protections, increase the terror on the undocumented communities, with children and adults still in ICE jails, tax cuts for the rich, embracing white supremacists and fascist organizations. He has furthered the repression against the Palestinian people, and the whole ruling class buildup of the U.S. military machine marches on. He has declared his intention to end socialism in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, and tighten the blockade on those countries. To solidify his ultra-right-wing base, recently he traveled to Tulsa on Juneteenth, although he had to change it by one date. That was deliberate. And he went to that imperialist monument called Mount Rushmore as a signal against the Native community. He has rallied his allies against the LGBT community and against the gains that have been made through so much struggle. By refusing to institute a national emergency plan against the coronavirus and actively organizing against people protecting themselves and against the production and the use of the Defense Production Act for the materials that people need, Trump is directly responsible, I would say, for the vast majority, if not all, of the people who have died due to the COVID virus. And there's no end in sight. But what about the Democrats? What kind of fight have they put up against Trump and the Republicans? They've done more harm than good, in a nutshell. They spent most of the Trump years accusing Russia of electing him and trying to impeach Trump on those accusations, confusing so many people in the working class. They did not stand up to the rich and powerful because they are part of the rich and powerful. And just before the March 3rd primary, as the field of 30 Democrats narrowed down to a handful, they joined together to make sure that the one candidate, Bernie Sanders, who was addressing issues affecting the working class, they made sure that Biden, who kept finishing 4th, 5th, would come out on top in the Democratic Party field. In other words, the Democrats at that time were willing to risk losing to Trump with Biden as their candidate, rather than have someone who they feared could possibly raise the expectations of the people of the United States. And the only reason Biden is now possibly going to defeat Trump is certainly not through his or the Democratic Party's efforts. It is Trump himself who has been Biden's best campaigner. As of a few days ago, 12 million people became at immediate risk of evictions because the moratoria on evictions in various states has lifted, with more to come. In California, for example, the moratorium on evictions has not been lifted, but you can imagine, with the highest housing cost in the country, what effect that will be, and how much more powerful the landlord class, the real estate developers will be to be able to hold sway over anyone who has to rent or buy a home. That means everybody. 54 million people have lost their jobs during the pandemic. I know, although some have been rehired, they've lost their health care, added to 30 more million people who already had no health care. The $600 supplement to unemployment and the pandemic unemployment program ended on July 25th with no prospects for the continuation. The climate crisis has receded from the headlines due to the above, but is galloping forward at a catastrophic speed. Unless the accelerating capitalist production is stopped by a planned sustainable socialist system, the very existence of humanity and all life is in danger. Of course, we must fight for reforms. There are many being propagated, but the reality is that the reforms are unlikely to save the planet. There is a vast military buildup and the real danger of a new war. Especially dangerous is a massively stepped-up hostility on every front against the People's Republic of China. Cuba, which has shown remarkable results in flattening the curve with only 87 deaths in this pandemic and sending hundreds of doctors and nurses around the world to save lives, is being critically affected by the U.S. blockade and the fact that they had to cut down and end international tourism entirely. We know that due to the hideous character of the Trump regime, the great majority of people, liberals and those on the left, in the broad sense, will likely vote for Biden. But we also know who Biden is, who never met a war he didn't like, who worked with the segregationists early in his career, who brags of his key role in the authorship of laws that led to explosive mass incarceration, who shepherded Clarence Thomas onto the Supreme Court by his attack on Anita Hill. And the Democrats cannot solve the crisis. Only socialism can. That's the important message of our campaign. There were tremendous effort in the last month conducted in the midst of the pandemic under safe guidelines. Our campaign of La Riva for president will be on the ballot in potentially 12, maybe 13 states. That's where I am right now, is Washington State, helping our people gather those signatures. And while it's commendable that the Greens are on almost all ballots, and we're not running against each other, to be clear, I believe that my campaign and members of my party and Peace and Freedom have proven that it's our mobilization capability, especially in the midst of these crises, of cancel the rents campaigns and caravan, of fighting everywhere against racism and police brutality. That is the key ultimately. Even more the elections. The elections are really a reflection of the movement in the streets. Leonard Peltier's situation I would like to talk about. His health has seriously deteriorated in recent weeks, and it was already bad. And the maximum security prison where he is confined in Florida does not have the medical facilities to treat him in this urgent manner. He needs compassionate release now or commutation of his sentence that has stretched for 44 years, as well as immediate transfer to a medical facility, and we need to focus on that effort, by the way, sisters and brothers. His legal team, and we believe that the focus must be directed toward his health situation and legal matters. There are certain legal struggles going on for him that obligated him to leave the campaign. And he requested that we understand that he was compelled to. He told me before we made the decision, he said, I leave it up to you, Gloria, to decide what happens with my campaign. He said, because I'm an honorable man, I'm a loyal person, and I committed myself to your campaign. But we felt that based on things that cannot be mentioned publicly, that it was very necessary for him to withdraw. And we are very honored that he accepted our vice presidential nomination to run on the ticket nationally. and for proposal in Peace and Freedom Party. He's a true people's hero. He was so enthusiastic and remained so until he had to withdraw. So I want to read what he wrote to me the other day. He said, "I know this is a huge disappointment to you, as it is mine, but I have to drop out of the campaign with Gloria. My medical problems are not getting any better. I need to try to get home, or at least closer. If so, it would be easier to get out. So please, forgive me if I've disappointed any of you. I did not intend to, nor was I dropping out because I did not believe in it. I'm seriously hurting. Just know I love you young people who support me. You're awesome. Thank you for your support and love. Doksha, Leonard Peltier." Our vice presidential candidate now is Sunil Freeman, a longtime activist who I've known for many years and who I greatly respect for his activism in struggling for disability rights for all. He's an author, also from Washington, D.C., and he'll be joining us by speaking on his nomination. So sisters and brothers, let's go forward to spread the message of socialism. Let's get out into the streets evermore. Let's organize the working class, which is desperate for a message of salvation from this brutality of the capitalist system. Thank you very much.